Welcome back to another episode of the King's Pulse podcast presented by the King's Herald. My name is Brendan Nunez, and today we got Chris Watkins joining the show of Sacktown Sports 1140 and Return of the Roar podcast. What's going on, Chris? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Yeah, just wrapped up work and just chilling. We had practice earlier today, so it's just kind of it feels good to be like in the swing of things, like practices are happening now. Obviously, preseason game number 1 is out the way. The regular season was like 2 weeks away, I think. So I'm just chilling. This is a nice little calm before the storm, if you will.
It is. We got a weirdly long break between preseason game 1 and preseason game 2. Yeah. I think we saw the Lakers play like 6 games in preseason. The Kings are only playing 4, which is a little different. Real quick, I always forget to point this out, but trying to remember this more often. We are live streaming, and there's always video versions of these podcasts available on YouTube. So anybody listening on audio can, if they prefer to watch the pod, can check out King's Pulse on YouTube, and comments there are good places to leave questions that we'll answer in future episodes. But Chris, I guess one of the other things we do is rewatch these games on Twitch in live streams that we've been doing as well. And I guess the link for that is twitch.tv/BrendanNBA. I'm not going to lie. I'm never going to get used to plugging all these things. It feels real weird and unnatural. But we've been doing that. And so where I wanted to start, Chris, is what stood out to you when we did that rewatch of preseason game 1 against the Lakers?
The thing that really stuck out to me, actually, and this isn't, it wasn't my big takeaway from the game, but it was definitely the biggest misperception I think I had during the game was I really felt like initially when I watched the game, Matthew Dellavedova was pretty unspectacular. I just, I didn't think he was bad by any imagine, but I just thought he kind of was moving the offense a little. Didn't really have any memorable plays. I obviously remember his 3-point attempt because that I had not seen him shoot a basketball in a couple years, and just the I don't know, that was very it jumped out at me. But
he doesn't have a good looking shot, or what?
That was not what stuck out to me, but no, it's not pretty. But just his impact, honestly, I thought he had a lot of hustle. I mean, it's honestly what you would expect from Matthew Dellavedova. A lot of hustle plays, just a lot of grit. He was fighting for rebounds. Had proved that he had that dog in him for sure.
Yes.
Was the biggest takeaway for me. And I mean, that was really my biggest question was, can Delly show signs that he still has some life in those legs? And I think he's only 32 years old, which shocked me when I heard, but he's been out of the league for like 2 years now, and just for on rewatch especially, I was really impressed with just how active he still is.
Yeah, apparently he's only a month into 32, which is pretty wild. And I kind of had the same thing. I think that maybe I wasn't as locked into the game when it came to the minutes that Delly was in, admittedly.
That's also
but
true.
Yeah, rewatching it, I definitely thought that he was decent. I think it's like good relative to what you would hope for from a backup point guard,
right?
Which I think third string point guard, not even backup. Right. So I think relatively, I thought that was solid. I was even more impressed with Keegan. Like, I think I already obviously came away from the game impressed with Keegan, but just like, he just looks comfortable. I thought that at the beginning of the game and in my initial watch that maybe he looked a little rushed, or I just thought it was like a lot of mid ranges and like these push shots. And it's like, I thought he should get all the way to the rim. And maybe that was like him settling a little. I don't know if that was actually the case. Like, I think that he was just trying to figure out where his best spot was going to be that game. And I liked him messing with the floater a little bit at first, and then he kind of fell into it. I thought that Holmes was solid. Like, he looked like a pretty rough watch first time around, and then the second it wasn't quite as bad as I maybe thought. And I think the whole experience of like live by the buddy, die by the buddy, I think we're going to get a little bit of the same with Malik Monk in a different way. They play differently, but like we were talking about it, there's a little bit of sometimes you just have to like, similarly to Dante last year, but again, obviously different players. Like every once in a while, there's just going to be a shot that I think you just have to forgive.
Yep. Because sometimes they'll go in, and And honestly, I think it's just part of Malik getting for whatever reason. I mean, he it's not that he lacks confidence. It's just he
Oh, he does
really
not.
all he does is take tough shots. It's really kind of incredible. It's kind of like it's a little J.R. Smithy in that way that it's almost like the tougher the shot, the easier it is for him. But I mean, yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that there's going to be a lot of moments, not only offensively though, defensively as well, where it's just like, man, like we have to live with what Malik's doing on this end because I mean he might be scorched earth on the other end. So that definitely for sure stuck out as well. And to your Keegan point as well, I think there were 2 to 3 different times where you and I both were like, I mean, that's that Chris Middleton thing that he keeps talking, or that I shouldn't say he keeps talking about, but that he mentioned when he first came in here. We saw so many instances already where it was like, how is this guy's first, real NBA game, or I guess not even real NBA game, but first NBA action. It was really impressive to see, and there was a couple shots to me that stick out, but it was incredibly impressive from Keegan, and he definitely was the MVP of that game for sure.
He definitely was on both sides, even. I mean, Braun hardly played. And I think that it's worth noting that like the starters were pretty tough in that game. Like,
Very.
if this wasn't a preseason game, like it looked like the Kings might get blown out, to be honest. Like, you never know what would have happened in that second, third, fourth quarter, but like end of the first, it was not going well. And I think if the Lakers were running AD and Braun for
Yeah.
most of that game,
Yeah.
I'd be
Completely.
even Russ. Russ looked solid. Like
Mhm.
he was kind of getting the better of De'Aaron. He also was just kind of bullying Davion when Davion was on him. Like it wasn't. There's definitely things that still needed to be cleaned up when it came to the starting unit, and I think there's just a lot of guys getting used to playing each other. Like on offense, it's like a pretty free flowing offense that they have a lot of their own things that they can do within the flow of the offense to kind of switch it up and keep defenses on their toes. But I think it's going to take some time getting used to each other with that type of offense. Like it's not all that different than I think what Alvin's kind of was last year. But I think the big difference is like there are some slight adjustments for sure. It's offensively, but I think the big difference is just like when you have that sort of read and react or like free flowing offense, freelance, I guess, like you would say, is having high IQ players is where that's going to shine, right? And that was like the big thing in the offseason where I thought they improved and they got rid of the guys that maybe don't exactly have good basketball IQs is a kind way to say it. So I think that that's pretty telling. And I think there's a lot of, a lot of dribble handoffs, a lot of playing through Domas, obviously, like Mike Brown in one of the clips we'll get to here that I'm gonna play throughout the episode talks about playing off 0.5. So just everybody playing off ball and running the ball through the 5, which is Domas, obviously. I think when they try to do that with Rashawn out there, it's a little bit weird because it's not exactly his strong suit. But before actually, let's just stay on that offense. I think one of the other things to watch for is these like split cuts that they're doing a lot, which for anybody listening is to give you an example, say that De'Aaron is on the perimeter and Herter comes up and gives him a screen. From there, those two guys can go in whatever opposite directions that they want, and it's just to confuse the defense. Herter could slip that and go to the rim. Fox could look like he's going to go over the screen and come back around and go and back cut sort of to the rim, or he could just curl to the rim. He could go off of that and then into a dribble handoff from Domas, and Herter pops out. But I think there were like a handful of times where both guys did the same thing at once, and that's not what you want to happen. And that's just going to be getting used to like each other's tendencies. I think like I've kind of thought that a new coach, you're going to have growing pains like we saw with Boston last year. And it wouldn't surprise me if that made for like a little bit of a tough start, but I kind of think that's just part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to, and it's not going to be just over the preseason. It's going to take a couple games here. And let's not forget that, De'Aaron and DeMontis haven't played more than, I think, 15 games last year together. So they're still very new. And, that's why you hope that training camp and hopefully, honestly, we look back at this week that we're having right here and they can look back on this and say, thankfully, we had pretty much an extra training camp. I mean, when you really think about it. And so I'm very intrigued to see how they look against Portland. I think it is actually pretty interesting that these first two games are against the Lakers and against the Blazers, because I'm pretty sure that's the two teams that the Kings are going to be fighting at the end of the season for the. Hopefully the Kings are at the top end of the play-in tournament, but I definitely foresee, the Lakers, Portland, possibly New Orleans also being in that mix. But I think after one game, I'm feeling like they are where they probably should be in terms of, getting to know each other. And like you said, like there's just going to be these growing pains, but for them to not be behind schedule to me is the big thing. They did look very bad, but in that first half, and you mentioned that, but I think, it was a lot of missed shots in that first half. And I think if, half of those jump shots go in, it kind of does a lot for that team. And the big problem with having Fox and Sabonis on the floor is that it limits your spacing, and you need shooters out there. And if the shooters aren't hitting their shots, that's kind of the worst case scenario for the Kings. So, if it's almost like that's pretty much as bad as it's going to look. And it looked pretty damn bad. But nonetheless, I think the team looked solid overall.
Yeah, part of that, I kind of wonder how much, like, HB is not going to go 0 of 4, right? Even De'Aaron, like 0 of 3, like I would guess he hits 1 consistently. Herder went 1 of 3. Like Murray was the only guy knocking down his triples. Yes, Herder did hit that first one from real deep too. And that guy can shoot a couple steps behind the line consistently. And he doesn't have to get like all too much of a windup or anything. It's still a quick release from really deep out. Yeah, and other guys will hit their shots. Like Monk will hit it at a better rate. You hope that Davion gets more shots to go down from beyond the arc. But part of me wonders, like, if KZ starting, I mean, offensively is where that's a question, right? Like defensively, I think it makes sense for sure. It's just like offensively, the spacing there. And I kind of want to get to, we have clips before we get to focusing on Keegan and kind of defensive versatility, but sticking on the offense. Here's Mike Brown from practice today talking about some of his values on the offensive end.
Well, I mean, we have a few staples. It's not just pace, but it's spacing. It's pace, spacing, playing in the 0.5, which is getting off the ball, ball reversals, and then paint touches. And there's a lot of ways to get paint touches, not just by the dribble, but if a guy cuts, we want him cutting the score. Because if you cut hard to score, you're going to draw the defense in. If you set a pick and roll and you dive hard, you're going to draw the defense in. And all you're doing is helping your teammates out. And so we have 5 staples, those 5 staples that I talked to you about. And we try to stress them as much as we can. And, watching film, talking about them every day, drilling them, and making sure offensively that we put some stuff in that promotes those staples is what we believe will help our entire group continue to grow in that area.
I mean, Mike Brown literally laying out the staples of their offense and defense has been nice for sure. He actually told us when it came to the defense that he would literally walk us through.
Say this.
He told us he would walk us through their offense and defense. He clarified walk for sure, so that way none of us would sue him if there was any injuries. But like, we have to follow up on that.
Yes, I was.
Like, I have to be like, I would be like, so Avery, like, what is this happening?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we're gonna have to actually make that happen and hold him to that, because that would be awesome to be able to do. But the 5 things that he highlighted. What's the word? I keep the 5. Why am I drawing a blank? He said the 5. It's not schemes, whatever. The 5 crucial points of their offense. Drawing a blank on the word that he used. Are pace, spacing, playing off 0.5, which 0.5 would be Domas, and that's just off-ball movement, ball reversals, and then paint touches. And I think him talking about paint touches not only being off the dribble, but off of cutting is really big. Like when you see those split cuts that we were talking about, the guy hitting the paint and being fully committed, which is what Mike Brown's talking about, fully committed to that cut is really important. And I think that this is where like De'Aaron, in my mind, can lead by example. Like if De'Aaron's cuts are hard every single time, that guy is drawing a lot of off-ball pressure by doing that. But the other reason I point him out specifically is because like he's out there with a lot of offensive responsibility. And like, that's one of those small details where it's like, when you have such a heavy burden offensively or just in the game in general, are you going to be able to give 100% on those small details? And I think him doing that would be really big, because I get why that's like a tough thing to do with the amount of minutes that he's playing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and you can translate that right over to the other side of the ball as well. I mean, that his defense has been really suspect at times, and I think he has even. I'm not sure if he's actually came out and said it, but I mean, it's kind of been implied that it's because he has such a huge offensive workload. So I mean, that's kind of the story for De'Aaron this season is going to be. Can you lock in for 48 or however many minutes that you're on the court, because it's not just going to be about his offense and what he brings offensively, because in theory we have more offensive weapons this year that we can rely on, and so he won't have to be he won't have to shoulder that burden as much as he has in the past. So yeah, I mean that's a great point that you make about the cutting, and Mike Brown has made a big point of paint touches since he's gotten here. I'm pretty sure in his first press conference, it was one of the first things he mentioned was about how it's crucial for the offense to get at least 2 feet in the paint on every possession. If you want to, it just makes the defense collapse, and that's where you can really get your disadvantages defensely.
That's how you get wide open Okpala threes right there.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, they had a lot of good looks, I thought, the other day. They just weren't hitting them. So, it actually during our film breakdown, I remember us wondering about their defensive schemes in terms of using the baseline and using the sideline. And Mike did highlight that in that clip that you just played about using the sideline and the baseline as that extra defender. So that's definitely something that I remember noticing in our film breakdown the other day, but something I'm going to be looking forward to in the future.
Definitely. You literally asked, like, you were like, always growing up, I got told to never give baseline up. And what's up with it here? I forget who we were watching that ended up giving it up at that time.
Yeah.
But Mike Brown's quote today, I don't know that it was part of that, but if it wasn't, just in case it was, quote, "We're not funneling at baseline. We're keeping the ball on the sideline." If you keep the ball on the sideline, you have 2 extra defenders. You have the sideline as an extra defender, and then you have the baseline as an extra defender. So it makes sense. It's just keeping it out of the middle of the floor, but also not giving up baseline. Like, you're just trying to keep them in that corner. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you'll see a lot of icing pick and rolls, which for anybody unaware, if there's a pick and roll on the side of the floor, say it's on the right side of the floor, a screen comes up on the left, the defender is going to jump in front of that screen, kind of above the 3-point line, if that's where it's set, to keep the ball on the side of the floor. And that's where a lot of times you'll see the guy with the ball do like a fake left to right cross, and it looks like the defender gets just like cooked, but really he's doing his job of not letting them get back towards the middle. And then the big is kind of responsible. And Mike Brown said, like, our help is built around those priorities on the defensive end, which I think is interesting. Next clip I want to get to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just adding to that. If you see people in the middle of a game just going through the middle of the paint, that means things aren't going well, is essentially the gist of all of that. If people are just running down, it's essentially like soccer. I mean, it's kind of a very soccer-minded defense. Like, even again, from like an elementary, I didn't play a lot of club soccer or anything like that, but even the most basics is don't let the ball in the middle, just because it's so much easier to score. Your depth perception is different. Obviously, for anyone who's taken a side shot in basketball, it's really harder to hit it from the side. I mean, at the pro level, that's not the same issue, but fundamentally, keep people out of the middle.
Yeah, and I think it just like limits the options that the offensive player has to distribute. If they hit the middle, they have the left and right side of the floor as options to dime up. And then if they don't have that, then skip passes over the top are going to be more difficult, and they just like limit their total amount of options. And I think the paint touches translate to the other end too. Like, I think that the Kings want to get as many paint touches as possible on offense, but it's just also limiting the opposing paint touches on the other end.
Absolutely.
And perimeter containment's going to be tough. Like I don't know. Let's get to this clip real quick before we talk about defense, because I want to get your thoughts there in a second. But this is Trey Lyles from today talking about adjusting to a new offense and a new defense under head coach Mike Brown.
And how confident are you that that's gonna work for you? So far this year, I just think we've been more open, with one another, communicating, getting on each other's cases, understanding what we're doing. It's not that much of a different scheme than what we had last year when I got here, but I just think guys are a little bit more bought in. Coach Brown has definitely, made it a key that we focus on those things, and guys are taking that to another level and showing on the court.
What about the other end? How long does it take to get used to a new offense?
It's pretty easy, It's a free-flowing offense. We don't have many plays and stuff like that. We kind of just go through and read one another and see what the other one's doing and go from there. So it's kind of an easy offense to play.
Guys are more bought in is the real big difference. Are you buying it or what? Sounds like something you hear every year, no?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, the vibes are always good during training camp. That's super interesting to me because, I mean, obviously Trey wasn't here at the beginning of last season, but with the few exception of a couple guys, it always felt like the vibes have been good here. I mean, there really hasn't been much, hostility in our locker room as you see what's happening down in the Bay. Like the Kings have never really, not pretty much since they've ushered out of the DeMarcus Cousins era, they've really been honestly a team of really, really nice guys. And so, it's a little bit of lip service for sure that the vibe is good, but I think it's more just the guys all being on the same page.
I'm buying it because there's different guys this year. Like we're getting told previously, like, oh, it's a different vibe, and it's like all the same people, except for the end of the rotation. And this year is just a whole different group. I know there's been a lot of different groups throughout the time that Sacramento's been in this drought, but like Mike Brown, accountability is like totally just what we're seeing happen. Like Trey Lyles right there talking about the communication being really big and like just feeling comfortable calling your teammate out when they fuck up. Like, I think it's just really important in any environment. I'm sure everybody listening can relate. Like if you have a desk job and you have to work with the person next to you and they're not pulling their weight, it's so nice when you're able to say, hey, I need you to be also doing X, Y. You're only doing X, Y, and I need you to be doing Z as well, and not feel like they're going to feel a type of way about that. And instead it's going to be a productive conversation that's going to make life easier for the both of y'all. Like, and it's just going to lead to better results. Like, I think that's just so important to have a healthy environment like that. And I think that Mike Brown like sets the example there, right? Where
I was just about to say that. Yep. I think
he's going to call guys out.
Aaron said that almost point blank. I'm pretty sure almost verbatim. Actually, he said, Mike's going to call you out on anything, like small shit, big shit, doesn't matter. Like he's going, if he sees something, he's going to say something 100%. And while I'm sure at some point that might weigh on a lot of people, I think at the moment that's exactly what this team needs is a ton of accountability. And it sounds like, I mean, they're taking to it really well. And it'll be interesting middle of the season how they take that. But again, for now, these are all positive signs. We can go with take this thing day by day, and it's good to see and hear that these guys are all on the same page still.
I'm with you. There's a lot of clips that
they're going to have a tough stretch during this season, and if not even in the beginning of the season. That's been the fault of this team in years of past, where it's just like any sign of adversity, the team completely crumbles. There's never really been a time where they have outperformed expectations. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting stretch when that happens.
Yeah, it's something Mike Brown's highlighted a few times, right? That like at some point we're going to take a step back. It's just the nature of this. Like there is adversity and you just hope that you're taking more steps forward than you are back. But I think like being prepared for that, knowing it's coming, and already having built a comfort level, having those tough conversations so you can continue to have them when you really need to, when things are not going well, is important. Like, I know that we saw him kind of call out Davion a little bit at the end of one of these practices, just sort of saying like, you got cooked. We need more from you. And I think that I heard that same practice in some of these practices, like Mike is just on people is the whole point. Coach Brown is on people. And again, I think it's in a very healthy way. Do you have any strong opinions on like positions and how to define different positions? Like I'm somebody that defines your position by who you can guard. I think positions are kind of all about defense, but what's your 2 cents on like what's the difference between a 2, 3, and a 4?
It's again kind of like when I see it, I know it. Like to me, it's more style, like offense, and I think more offensively for sure. But defense should definitely take into account just as much. I think with Keegan, it's more about defense, right? I mean, it'd be a lot tougher for him to keep up with, it's honestly tough because I can't even tell you. Like I always think of a 3 as LeBron and Kawhi Leonard and these guys, guys like that. But honestly, nowadays those are the 4s, and in my mind, a 4 is like a Paul Millsap or a Blake Griffin or someone like that who's a little bigger, obviously not a center, but still skilled enough, but also at the same time not as as quick as your Paul Georges and your Kawhis and stuff. So I guess I kind of need to recalibrate from that, but it's kind of, again, like initially it's just kind of how I see them. You can just kind of place them. You said defensively, but is there anything more complex than that? It's just kind of who can you guard?
I think so, and I think like to your point of like guys that kind of stick out as like the stereotypical ones that fit in those roles, like you definitely still see those. Like AD was just a 4 that the Lakers were up against, and Braun was at the 3. Like, but then you'll play Butler? Right. Like sometimes he's a 4, dude.
Sometimes he's a 2.
Sometimes he's a 1 almost. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's
and you don't know, right? Like, they're gonna go from Braun, AD, and D Jones to Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant, and Joseph Nurkic. Like, I think it's just very different night to night. And I think that's a good like lead into what Coach Brown and Keegan talked about with positions. And we'll start with Coach here. And I think there's a little bit of a spicy line that people could blow out of proportion, but we'll cover it after it runs.
Mike, we're seeing Keegan at the 3 actually quite a bit. How much in practice, what percentage of his reps are at the 3 versus the 4?
So really, our 2, 3, and 4 are all the same. For sure, it's more about can we match up defensively. Like Keegan, in my opinion, can probably play the 2, 3, or 4. So his versatility on both sides of the ball is a lot of fun to see, especially with how poised he is for a young guy.
Is he more effective defensively at 1 or 2 of those spots?
I haven't figured that out yet, but in some league he guarded some 2s. Obviously he's guarded 3s and 4s, so we'll see as we go along.
Spicy line is he can guard 2s, 3s, and 4s, obviously, and that the 2, 3, and 4 are all the same. I think I see it on offense, right? And it is position to position. 2s is a lot of faith in his lateral quickness on defense. Trying to think what 2s he was guarding in summer league. I think of like Benedict Mathurin, I guess, if he's ever playing a 2, but like I guess maybe he is alongside Tyrese, right? I mean, trying to think what Indiana's lineup is, but I don't even think they know what their lineup is. Yeah, I guess there's moments, and to his point, it's going to depend on who you're up against, but like the 2 is a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of a bailout to say this, but I think he's right in the sense of, if Keegan gets switched onto a 2, it's not the end of the world. He can probably defend him for a couple possessions or, a possession here and there. whether or not Mike is going to, put out, because that's the thing. Like, is Mike Brown going to really put out some massive lineup of like De'Aaron, Keegan, Barnes, Okpala, and Sabonis, or something like that would be the situation in which Keegan's a 2. Like, there's not really any other situation.
And that's only happening if you're against like
the
Jimmy
old
Butler at the 1 for
2
for whatever reason. Yeah, like,
or maybe maybe that's a lineup you throw against the Clippers, because that's something I've been thinking. With KZ starting the other day, I was like,
PG's a 2.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, if PG's a 2, I mean, yeah, which they realistically could. I think they still have one of the more twins, right?
I think say it's Collison or not Collison, but Reggie Jackson, or definitely not Collison, but Reggie Jackson or John Wall at the point. Then you have PG, Kawhi, Marcus Morris, and then Zubac. Like, that's a lineup where maybe Keegan does play the 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, in that sense, sure. But even then, that raises the initial Keegan Murray defense question of like, can he guard someone like Paul George? Is he quick enough to defend someone who, because I mean, that's more of the can Keegan play 3 conversation. But yeah, I mean, I think Keegan has the capability, to where you can't really say, oh, Sabonis can guard 2 like, even if he gets switched onto a 2, it's a mismatch. It's a big mismatch, and he's probably going to get cooked. Keegan gets switched onto a 2, hopefully it's not Brad Beal, but he should probably be able to hold his own against most. So in that sense, I hear him. But again, like, I don't think we're going to see any massive lineups with Keegan really offensively playing the 2 as well.
Yeah, I don't think
also,
so either.
Defensively, with him saying 2 through 4 is the same for us, I can understand in the sense of it's all just perimeter defenders at this point.
Yeah. And just like there's some teams that I think have like fully phoned it in on what is what position. And like those are the teams where like, yeah, maybe Keegan has to feel like a 2. Like if you're talking about Boston and it's like Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, Tatum, Jalen, and Robert Williams or Al Horford, like a jumbo lineup where your 2 is, or even Marcus isn't in that, and you have like Jalen as your 2. Like, yeah, there's just bigger teams where I think you have to deal with that a little bit more often. Like offensively, to your point though about like the more traditional thing, like having a 2, but really it could be any of your 2 through 4. But having another guy that can put the ball on the floor, it just like traditionally was the 2 before. But having another guy that can do that, I think is really important to help break down a defense. But it's a little different when your 1 can do it, and technically your 5 kind of can run an offense. But yeah, so someone in the chat does ask, Sean Williams, did you guys watch Victor and Scoot balling out? We did watch some of them highlights. We're going to get to that in a sec. But before we move on to that, I have one more clip of Keegan talking about his comfort at different positions.
It's been a little bit of both. It depends on the day. So they're just putting me in different spots, seeing what I'm good at, what I need to work in. So I feel like I'm getting reps at both spots pretty evenly. So for me, it's just going out and just trying to figure it out.
Do you think you're going to play both spots as we move forward?
It just depends on the lineup. It depends on the lineup we have on the floor, who we're playing against. So there's a lot of variables that factor into that. I'm up for whatever.
How critical can you be of your performance in that game when most people think that probably went about as good as it could?
Yeah, I had a lot of spots, especially defensively and offensively, that I need to work on. Different reads that I missed offensively, rotating defensively and things like that. So it's a bunch of little things that the coaches have talked to me about and I need to improve on. So I think it's a learning experience for me.
A solid plus 2,000 fans and 15% team chemistry right there. Like, Keegan gives literally 2K answers. And it's like, when you're trying to figure out what's the right answer here that's going to give you those fans and chemistry, like Keegan is the right answer. Because sometimes you think you press the right answer, but then your guy just goes off and you're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm an asshole now just because I didn't agree with this guy. Like, my guy's got hella attitude. No, like Keegan is the right answer every time. And it's a little like cookie cutter and dry, but like, that's just what Keegan is, dude.
Yeah. I've very much enjoyed Keegan's, just his whole, I just love his existence. He's a really, really funny guy to have on the team.
He definitely is. And I put a lot of clips into this episode. I'm curious, just a little bit of feedback on that. If people like the amount of clips that's been going on, I could do that post game when it's happening throughout the year. We do have a lot because of all the not training camp. I guess we're past training camp, but all the practices that have been going on between preseason game 1 and game 2. Do you have any other thoughts before we move on to a little bit of like Victor and Scoot, and then we'll get to what Draymond said today too at one point?
No, not really. I mean, I could ask you something more big picture. I'm kind of curious. I touched on it earlier, but like where do you fall in the hierarchy of like where you expect the Kings to finish in the Laker, Pelican, Blazer situation?
I can't put them above the Lakers. I know that the Lakers' depth is ugly. I was a little, maybe not sad, but I wanted to see how Troy Brown looked. I think that he's somebody that could be interesting for their depth. But the fact that I'm saying like Troy Brown is somebody that has to be interesting says a lot. Like JTA, somebody that I like, but I don't know that you want to be relying on him after like their main 4. I don't know who you can rely on. I like Pat Bev. I like Austin Reeves. But what it comes down to is like, it's just Braun and AD. And I'm not betting against those two. And even Russ, like if one of those guys goes down, Braun or AD, like, and Russ, I'm not going to bet on against 3 Hall of Famers when the Kings just like haven't historically had it. You know, I'm not going to fault anybody that can. I honestly think this comes from growing up being a Celtics fan and constantly betting against Braun. And at some point in my life, I had to just like come to realize like I'm just never going to bet against this guy again.
100%. I definitely understand that. And it is like history has just bared that out, that if you bet against LeBron, he's going to prove you wrong in the most humiliating way possible. Because he's inevitable. He is what Thanos said. But to counter what you say about not betting against them, I don't even know if it's really betting against those guys. It's just they're gonna like those, if not all 3 are going to get injured at some point during this year. I mean, LeBron James is 30, what is he, 38 now, 39, has played the most minutes of any player in NBA history in terms of, you know, regular season and postseason minutes. He's going to break that, I believe, this year. You know, he's obviously going for his points record. AD is, I mean, we know AD's injury history. Russ is in and out of.
AD actually already not playing game 2.
Already missed the game,
which was really funny. I had to like, I saw it and was like, was this a joke? And it's like, no, this is real. They should have played him 2 minutes, dude, just to not get the memes. Like
it's being way too hyper. Conservative. Like that's just ridiculous. Like the guy needs to be treated like a basketball player before I can pencil the Lakers in to really anything at this moment. And I mean, enough. Russ is in and out of trade rumors every day. Like Russ might not even be here by game 1.
Well, and that like might be a good thing, right? This is the other thing that factors in there is that like they're probably going to make a trade. Like the whole like, oh, are they just going to waste a year of Braun and just like go into next year with cap space so that way they can look at Kyrie? Like, I don't think so. Like, could they? Sure, but more likely than not, they're going to trade 1 or 2 of these first rounders and get probably better, I would assume. Like if they trade for Buddy and Miles Turner, do you feel like they're for sure better than the Kings at that point?
I mean, no. I wouldn't trust that. I would not
trust Buddy Hield.
I would not trust Buddy without any training camp or anything. I mean, any prior knowledge of playing with LeBron to figure that out, and especially defensively, that would just be an absolute train wreck. What do you think? Actually, did see Bill Simmons put out on Twitter last night after the Draymond incident leaked? Pretty much that trade that it would be Draymond going to the Lakers, Miles Turner going to the Warriors, and Buddy still going to the Lakers.
Interesting.
Right.
I just don't think Draymond's getting traded. Like, I can believe this since I grew up around the Warriors, but apparently I'm a Draymond defender here in these last couple days. Like, I really think that Draymond is a huge part of that team. Obviously, he's not above Steph Clay, but like, I think not just as much, but I think it's almost underrated how much Steph and Clay benefit from playing off Draymond. Obviously, Draymond benefits playing off those two exponentially more, but like, Draymond deserves a lot of flowers for his impact in like changing the game to what it is today. Because sure, like Steph's pulling up from ridiculous range, and like the amount of free reign and just the amount of bullshit that guards are allowed to try and pull now because they've seen Steph do it at a decent rate and that's becoming acceptable. Obviously, Steph has his impact there, but when it comes to like small ball existing, it's kind of Draymond.
That's a great point.
And Iggy.
Great point.
Like Draymond being able to play the 5, function as a big at his size, but also guard smaller guys in the way that he did. Like, and he's still kind of that guy defensively. Yeah. I think he was second in defensive player of the year voting last year, which I think is a little bit kind. I think he's definitely not the same dude that he was on defense, but he's like, I don't know. I think the Draymond stuff is a little overboard, to be honest.
No, I definitely hear you. I mean, and he absolutely does not get his flowers even still to this day, but yeah, I mean, you're completely right on your point. I mean, even I remember when they were like, Draymond is going to be our starting 5, just thinking like, that's absurd. Like, I see what you're trying to do because it allows you to have more shooting on the court, which you probably don't even need, but you're just going to get killed at the rim and you're going to get killed on rebounds, and all of the positive that it gives you on offense, it's going to end up killing you defensively because you'll just feed your center and he'll cook Draymond. That simple. And it really, like, it's just, that was the thinking at the time. And now, I mean, it's not unheard of for, Jeff Green to play center. And, you see someone like, I mean, Robert Williams probably doesn't have an NBA career if not for Draymond Green. He's just an undersized center at that point, and there's no way I don't think they would give him the opportunity that they've given him.
I mean, Dre is, yeah, I think exactly what you're saying, and where I was at. Like, I think that Draymond changed the game almost in complimentary because he was with those other guys. Changed, like, just deserves a lot of credit for that. And I guess that we can just lead into. We'll get to the comparison with Portland in a sec, because that's who they play next, and that's the other team I think they're kind of really competing with. But since we're already on the topic of Draymond, I'm just going to play this clip. When did this happen? Do you know the whole interrupted thing?
I believe that this is like the clip that they got from, like, you know how the shop always does a preview before the episode airs? I believe that is what this is from. I could definitely be wrong.
Okay, so it might be a new episode. That would make sense because this seems new to me.
It's definitely on the newest episode. I just don't know if that new episode has came out or if this is just the snippet that they always post.
Got you. That's good clarification, because I was like, is this an old clip somebody pulled and we're just freaking out about it or what? But, okay, so we'll get to it here. It's Braun on the interrupted. PJ Tucker's in there as well. It's the shop. It's the show with Braun as well, and Maverick Carter. So yeah, the Kings kind of catch a stray. So here you go.
It's not a night that I show up and I don't want to be a dog, especially if it's a Bron coming in, if it's a Giannis coming in, because them the games I live for.
Easy. You ready for them?
Easy. It's the nights I show up and we playing against the sorry motherfuckers.
The Sacramento Kings.
I can't play.
Who, the Kings?
The Kings stink. You name them. OKC right now.
OKC.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah. It's hard those
nights. The Kings make it better this year, I hope. But, it's like, how am I supposed to get myself up with this engine?
Because you done played so many big-time games.
To fucking, on this soft Tuesday, to fucking play on this.
Bro, first off, PJ Tucker's voice is incredible. Just like how deep it is, bro. Like, I just don't even know how it's just incredible.
Some pop type stuff.
I completely I mean, this is like kind of the untold secret of the NBA. I mean, I think it's became more public, but like players really don't give a shit about your random Tuesday games in Sacramento or OKC when they're bad. Like everyone kind of already knows it. Obviously, for a couple years ago, there was, Popovich would like sit all of his starters in games like this where he didn't care about and the league got mad. But it definitely makes sense. I think it's interesting that people are you should, bro. That's what I wish. I wish the Dre would take a take an off day against the Kings. But yeah, I mean, I completely lost my train of thought there, but
My bad.
no, you're good.
People are freaking out that like.
Oh, that's what I was
wow.
going to say.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm surprised that people are freaking. I shouldn't be surprised, but I don't really know why people are upset at Draymond here when it's honestly Mav Carter's bitch ass who throws out a random stray.
you're wild. I mean, okay, so Dre saying these sorry ass teams, you can't like when you're sitting there and you hear that, the first teams that pop into your mind, most people that are NBA fans that are not directly based in Sacramento are going to think the Sacramento Kings. Like, just being real, this team
It's got to be
has
somebody.
sucked.
Yeah,
The team
and
has sucked,
they've
dude.
been the worst. They have been literally. I mean,
Horrible.
not the worst record wise, but like,
Well,
I
they'd
mean,
be good
again,
if
we
they were
all
the
know.
worst a couple times.
Yeah. It's just like, when you think bad NFL teams, you're probably still going to honestly think the Browns and the Lions. Like, that just is how it is. There are worse NFL teams, the Jaguars. Again, they're not really bad this year, but it's when you think NBA, it's going to be the Kings. And, honestly, there's really not a close second. If you had to name a second just perennially bad NBA team, like the Wizards, I guess.
The Wizards are a solid. The Knicks have been pretty tough for
The Knicks
minute
for
now.
sure. Obviously, the Knicks are in the public light, and so their failure. I mean, they haven't really had.
The chat said Knicks twice right away.
Boom. All right, so I guess it's the Knicks.
Yeah, there's definitely other teams, but like, I get it from Dre's point of view, and Dre does say like the Kings are hopefully better this year.
Hopefully.
Like, I think it's just because Dre was already in the news for the whole Jordan Poole incident as well. And then this ends up happening. And yeah, I don't know. It was something that I probably wouldn't have even really talked about, but I felt like everybody was kind of freaking out about. So just wanted to.
My girlfriend sent it to me. So yeah. People
That's
are
how you know.
not happy. Yeah. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Last thing, Chris. Wembanyama is ridiculous. Victor Wembanyama.
Bro.
What the hell? 7-3.
You were talking about 2K earlier, bro. Oh my God. This guy is like, he's a cracked to play 2K. Like, you literally can't even make this guy in a video game. Like, that's how ridiculous this man is. It doesn't make sense.
I tweeted this the other day. Like, he's the type of shit that, like, if I went up against in 2K, I'd probably turn my console off and just be like, this is stupidly unrealistic.
This
like,
is
what
broken.
are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. He's pulling up from legit Curry range in transition, doing these fadeaway threes. He has like Giannis-esque moments of finishing. He doesn't have like a super slim build. He is slim, but it's not like
he doesn't look. How old is he? He's like 18.
I
right?
think 18, 19.
And he does not look. I mean, yeah, to your point, he doesn't look like Chet. He doesn't look. I mean, I even remember like Joel Embiid was
18.
a skinny guy in college, and like Wembanyama is probably bigger than all of those guys. He is.
But it's not like
muscle to him for sure. He's got some.
Yeah, it's not super worrisome or anything. Yeah, it's not Chet. Like, and I wasn't really tripping about Chet's weight either, just because I thought he played super physical still. But like, yeah, Victor's ridiculous. And then I just want to say, like, I know that people are giving him his credit, so maybe it's not fair to say he's not, but like it might be just getting overshadowed in all this. Like, Scoot Henderson has looked really solid too. I haven't watched these full games, but just seen a handful of the clips. And for Scoot to be doing what he's doing against Wembanyama is really impressive. Like, he's going to get blocked a couple times, but that's always just a nature of a guard.
But also he's going against Wemp. Like, everyone knows this is the number 1 versus number 2 recruit. Probably number 1 and 2 picks in the draft. And Scoot Henderson is taking that shit personally. Like, he did he try and dunk on him?
He did. He got swatted, but he really tried it.
And like, he tried it. Like, this fool is. I love the intensity and I love his mentality. Big Anthony Edwards vibes. Like, he's going to be an absolute monster in the league too. I mean, it's going to be really crazy to like. I mean, we're definitely going to look back on these games and be like, that shit was insane. I mean, it's really not often that the number 1 and number 2 picks in the draft go off against each other in college even. So the fact that we're getting to see this is pretty incredible, and for them to perform that the way, I haven't seen the game 2 highlights, but for them to have the performances that they had in game 1, and to really just take over. I mean, they took over social media that night completely. I mean, everybody was tweeting about Wembanyama, and even Scoot got his share for sure. But I did see the Wembanyama fall away 3 from the corner today. And to your point, that's some turn off the Xbox shit right there. Like, if somebody does that with Rudy Gobert, you turn the Xbox off immediately, and you're like, not today. I'm not playing this today.
I saw somebody say this man has never shot a contested jumper in his life, and I thought that was hilarious because his release is so high with being 7'3".
That's KD.
Yep.
KD got the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds crazy, right? And there's issues with this. There's issues with every comp, but like the people that are out there like saying like it's KD mixed with Rudy Gobert, like
they got to throw.
It sounds insane, but like you really see it with Steph. With Steph, maybe chill on the Steph.
No,
but I get you. Oh yes. Yeah.
I think it's a nice marriage of the because I think like at his worst he'll be Kristaps Porzingis, or a better version honestly of Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah,
because
and that's like the absolute floor. I think he'll be way better, but like absolute floor. Yeah. To go through those numbers real quick, game 1 that the Ignite won by 7. Wembanyama has 37 on 7 of 11 from 3, 11 of 20 from the field, 8 of 12 from the free throw line, 5 blocks, 4 rebounds, 7 threes, and 5 blocks is a ridiculous 2 things to do in one game. On the other end, Scoot Henderson with 28 and 9, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, 11 of 21 for him, 2 of 3 from deep, and 4 of 6 from the line. And then to go to today's game, which it's dope, like you said, to see these 2 guys, number 1 and 2 likely picks. I do feel a little weird about saying that, to be honest, because I don't know the rest of the draft class. And I feel like there's oftentimes this is said really early in the draft process, and then someone else comes up. Like I think the Thompson brothers, the twins, are really, really damn good. But we'll have to see if these guys actually end up being 1 and 2. But the point is they straight up look like core pieces of a team, like future all-stars for sure.
Well, I think Wembanyama already is the number 1 pick. Like, this is the last big game he's going to have. And I mean, this might as well.
People are literally projecting him to be an all-time great. Like, it's insanity. And for them to play 2 games in a row, I think is really sick, to your point. Like, and they're doing this in November, which is so wild. But game 2, Wembanyama has 36 and 11 with 4 assists, 4 blocks, a steal. He goes 11 of 24 from the field, only 2 of 7 from 3, but still getting up 7 shots. Yeah. 12 of 16 from the free throw line. And Scoot Henderson only played 5 minutes. Did Scoot have some sort of injury, actually? I did not catch anything but the Victor highlights, admittedly, in game 2. We have to shout out our boy, Steve.
My boy Double E. Oh my God.
Steeve for the first name. Last name is Hoyufat. HO space YOU space FAT.
Yeah.
That's my understanding is like his legal name. Like didn't change it up. This isn't like a world peace thing. I think this was his.
I would hope not.
I think he was born this way, man. Like
he was born fat.
And he was born in the Hoyufat family. And I just think that that's one of the greatest things I've ever seen. For that to just casually be mixed in during an all-time matchup of prospects.
So that's the thing. That's what I thought instantly when I saw his name, is like, this is one of those moments where it's like, we're
not watching random Shima Moneki film.
No. This is like, he was literally made, like, this is his moment in time. Like, this was the reason for his birth, for his everything was for yesterday or whatever, 2 day, whatever that game was. It was to eventually, at the age of 34, play a G League Ignite team and then absolutely blow up for one day on the internet. Like he was literally
He's
put on
34
for that. He is 34 years old. So he's been playing for a very long time, is my point. He's been playing for a long time. We've never heard of him. And of course, he's on the team that goes to play this 1 versus number 2 matchup, and he just absolutely blows up and becomes the okay. Well, then we should probably, I got a lot of goods over there, so I should probably not talk bad about that.
Meg in the chat says his family's like the controller of the port in French Guinea. Is that Guinea? Is that how you say that?
There was a lot of controversy about that in the media room the other day. I heard Jason Anderson trying to figure that out.
Yes, no disrespect. I hope I'm pronouncing these countries right. That was the toughest thing about Eurobasket, is feeling like I'm butchering the names of countries. Like I really got to step up my game there. But I think that
Nigeria.
I got Nigeria. I got Nigeria. Do you have any other final thoughts before we get out of here, Chris? Anybody in the chat, if you have any questions you want to get in, let us know. But anything on your end, Chris?
I have a question for you. This is really random, and it's because you just forced me to try and rack my brain for something to say. Brendan, what has been your favorite media food?
Food? Caught me off guard there.
Yeah.
I mean, the cookies are a cop-out.
Yeah.
But I can't go with the cookies. I do want to just state to anybody listening, though, the cookies at Golden One Center in the media room, it's hilarious to me because they're good cookies, right? But it's funny to watch national media members come in and get told, oh, you have to try the cookies here. Like, the cookies here are to die for, like, blah, blah, blah. They're really good. But, like, I swear the national media that comes to Golden One Center has to be like, God, they're just going to keep pushing these cookies on me, man. Yeah. Like, they're solid, but it's just funny how much they are talked about. Yeah. It's probably like one of the pastas. Like, yeah, it's probably some form of like the pasta and chicken that they do when the chicken isn't just like totally dry.
Which is like
sometimes it's tough. Yeah. If you get the right chicken, the lasagna is not bad.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
I have no answer for this. I mean, the cookies are always great. Like, it is. To your
Frank
point,
would say
like
the popcorn.
Yeah, the popcorn. The popcorn's all right, but I mean, the cookies are the star for sure. Like, those things are dangerous. The double chocolate chip, the chocolate. I actually think that they sell the cookies out on the concourse these days.
Do they?
Yeah, I believe at one of the stands they sell the salted chocolate chip cookies.
Do we have any? The chat's asking, do we have a jersey update, Chris? I think you and Frank were the ones to drop the.
Yeah.
What was for anybody that missed it previously? What was the jersey? The jersey talk from like a month ago that you guys released?
Yeah. That was just pretty much that the Kings won't be using their early 2000s, the ones that they wore when they play the Lakers, and they're just black and white. They will not be revealing those as the City Edition or Statement, whatever the hell it is, because that those any jersey, I guess, like any of the City Edition jerseys, if they're a throwback, has to be an anniversary edition. So there has to be like a specific reason for doing it, or it has to be like a 15-year, 20-year anniversary kind of thing. And that's what we're seeing with the Bucks and the Suns. I think there's one other team that's doing their cool. The Wizards, I think, are doing cool throwbacks as well. So that was the news that we dropped. I think. Oh, and then they just said that it would be something new and something we haven't seen before. I think the thing that comment was talking about was something that Frank's been big on. I'm actually curious to know what your thoughts on it are. There have been a lot of pictures released on the King socials, and we've seen it because we've been at practice. But the people in jerseys, there's white, there's black, and there's red. People are drawing a lot of conclusions on lineups based off of what jersey people are wearing on a given day. Do you take anything from it?
Yes, now that we've seen it a lot and there's like consistency. I wasn't putting too much into the KZ stuff at first because I just didn't think that he was going to be starting, right? But now we've seen it for a while, where the first unit, which is always in black, is Fox, Herder, HB, KZ, and Sabonis. The second unit that we've seen consistently has been Davion, Malik, Keegan, Trey Lyles, and Rashawn Holmes. And then let's see if I can
The
keep
Reds.
up with. Yeah. I think there's another gray that is a third unit. And then the fourth unit looks to be in red. And I think, let's see if I can get this right. I actually think I could do the fourth unit easier, and then we can do the third unit by process of elimination. So the fourth unit has been
Your boy.
Which one of the guards, Deli or Cook?
I
know
honestly feel like I've seen them both in them. I feel like Deli, honestly.
I know it's been Keon and Kada, and then we've seen Moneki and Sam Merrill, and then
Moneki was in red today.
Yes, and I don't remember which guard, but it might be Cook. I don't know which one of the guards was third or fourth string, but that was fourth string. So then the rest of the third string would be either one of Cook or Deli. And then you've seen Terrence Davis, Chemezi Metu, Kent Bazemore. No, Kent Bazemore was in red. Damn. I have this mixed up. But I know that third string. Yes, I do think that they are pretty telling. I think guys you're seeing in red are fourth string. And I think that there's going to be things that vary, and who's in what string could change up, like we've heard Mike Brown talk about. But I think that now we've seen consistency with these, that like, yeah, I am putting stock in. I thought like in Trey Lyles' presser today, it was interesting that he talked about how he thinks him and Keegan are a good fit in the second unit. And like, meaning in my mind, like obviously they've gotten a lot of reps together as a second unit. And like, I thought that was pretty interesting. So I am putting stuff into it. I definitely think it's interesting. And like TD was still running with that third unit today. You know, I think that stuff does stand out to me. Yeah. Do you put anything into it?
I mean, I haven't in the past. I think for sure there's signs. I mean, obviously, anytime that you see, the main three wearing the same color, it's easy to draw conclusions off of that. But in terms of like it being anything solidified, I just don't think that there's anything that's like. I just still feel like it's going to end up being Keegan in that KZ spot. To me, it's probably, kind of like a dangling the carrot thing for Keegan, where it's more like, hey, like this guy has your spot until you take it. And, Mike Brown knows KZ. KZ's going to bring defense. KZ's, in that starting spot. I'm sure he's fighting for his life, trying to keep it. It's not a bad idea. I mean, every coach has their philosophy with how they want to treat rookies. And most of the time it is, they need to earn their spot. I would much rather have him do it now than in the regular season, where it's like, okay, we're in game 15 and this guy still can't get in the starting lineup. So that's what I've taken it as. I haven't really looked much into the Herder Monk thing either, just because to me, it just makes too much sense for Herder to be the starter.
I've been the same with that conversation. That's one of those ones that I have to bite my tongue a lot on Twitter when people are talking about Monk over Herder. No hate on Monk. I just really think that Herder's that guy, a way better fit.
And honestly, that's the thing. It's more about fit. It's just like Malik is what you want out of like a scoring sixth man. I mean, obviously Davion is the true sixth man, but in terms of like a guy off the bench, that's exactly what you want. Someone who has this irrational confidence, someone like, you see Jordan Clarkson won sixth man of the year doing a very similar thing, where it's just like, you come in, it's your time to run the show. Davion obviously isn't, creating a ton of offense for himself or for others, unless it's off the pick and roll. Like Malik is somebody, and I think we saw it a couple times in that second half where, there's 5 seconds left on the shot clock. He's a bucket getter. And that is not that's something actually last season that I would wonder about all the time, was in the last 10 seconds, or if we really, really, really need a shot and everyone knows that we need a shot, who do we give the ball to? And I think that answer now is clear. I mean, I actually think we have a couple different answers to it now.
Which is a nice problem. Maybe not problem, but a nice situation to be in. We'll go through
only one ball.
Yes, we'll go through a couple more of these. Which 5 are y'all not playing next game? Mike Brown did say they probably won't get through 20 guys going into next game. I don't know that it'll be, exactly 15 that he plays, but for the sake of like this exercise, let's alternate and we'll get to 5 total.
He also said that his starters are probably going to play about the first half. So it will be like cutting out the bottom 5, not, giving rest to Fox and Sabonis.
Yeah. And I think he said the starters could go a little bit into the second half, maybe, but only mentioned it as like a possibility because they didn't even start in the second half of last game. But let's do this as a little bit of a game where you'll cut someone first from playing, and then I'll cut one, and we'll get to 5 total. But you can go ahead and start with picking one player. If we only were allowed to play 15 guys next game.
Yeah, I mean, I think number 1 is Sam Merrill. It's unfortunate. I think Sam actually looked really good in his Lakers stint. He hit, I think, 2 jump shots. But you just kind of know what he is, and I don't think that there's really a spot for him. So unfortunately, Sam goes number 1.
Makes sense. I think that there's times where Sam is nice to put out as part of a lineup, just like to be an example of like where you would have a different shooter, to be honest, because sometimes you just need shooting in a lineup and you're just like, okay, well, imagine he swung that to Malik instead. You know what I mean? Like for just how an offense would function, it's important to have him out there, but I don't know that there's like anything moving forward. He feels like the 20th guy. I think we've said it before. Next one for me is Bazemore. And that has to do with like, you said we kind of know what we're getting with Sam Merrill. Like, I think it's even more true with Bazemore. You know what you're getting, and you know what you're not getting. I hate to be that guy. Like, Bazemore sucked last year. Bazemore played, 15, 20 games with the Lakers last year, and then was no longer part of their rotation, a team that, no different than going into this year, really needed depth. And he couldn't really play on that team. And I get that spacing was really important, and he couldn't shoot. That's going to be the same thing with the Kings. So I'm going Bazemore second. Who you got third? That's where it gets a little more tough, right?
Yeah.
You can talk through your options if you want.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking big here. And it's either going to be, I can actually see a world where Alex Len doesn't play. And not necessarily because he's not the third center, but just because kind of what you just said to Bazemore, and not necessarily because I think they're going to cut Alex, but more just, again, just trying to see what they have with Nemi instead of Alex. You kind of know what you're going to get with Alex. He's going to be solid. You're not probably going to call on him a lot during the season, so I don't know how much you really need to see from him. So I would expect to see Nemi get minutes in the second half over him, but that could just be me overthinking it. But I'm going to go with Alex. Probably not like the third option to get taken off the board, but just trying to rationalize it.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those bigs, right?
Yeah.
One of Len or Keita. And since you picked Len, I won't go with Keita. That'll leave like Keita sort of as like not an option here in my mind. And I can't believe you're forcing me into this, but I'm saying Keon Ellis. John points it out. I would love to watch. Yeah, we already know that he's the best player to ever wear number 23. Exactly. Like, it's just all locked in already. But like John Catterson points out here, they'll be on the team regardless. Like, these guys are two ways. They're going to be around. I can't, like, Chima Moneke feels like an option here, right? But I think you need to see what you have. You have to see Chima play. And you don't have to see Keon because he's going to be in Stockton no matter what. Like, Chima's like, you're making a decision on this.
Yeah, exactly. We have no idea what Chima Moneke looks like against NBA talent. We at least have some idea of what those two do.
Yeah. If we have to pick a fifth, it feels like it's Cook or Delly.
It feels like Quick. It feels like Cook to me, and maybe there's a chance that they alternate games. Maybe Delly will get all of this game, or Cook will get all of this game, and then the other will get all of next game, or whatever the breakdown is. He'll get the backup minutes. But I think that they need, again, kind of the same situation with the Len and Keita thing. They just need to pick one of them. And I think, I actually think it'll probably be Delly who sits, because I think Quinn got less minutes last game. At least it felt that way. And I think when Quinn did come in, he came in with Delly at first, so he was kind of more running the two. This is, again, just kind of me overthinking it, but I would think that they would want to see what Quinn looks like actually at point guard. So I'm going to go Delly as the fifth benched.
I think there's no wrong answer between the two. I think like important thing for me is like we mentioned Chima. I think that's a really big one. Like I want to see what is there. I know I'm sure they've gotten a decent look and decent feel based on training camp. We saw Mike Brown having a pretty long conversation with Chima today at practice, like 5-10 minutes. It felt like of just a one-on-one
That's what
conversation.
we were waiting for, actually, before it all
Yeah,
started.
and you saw
right?
Mike Brown like getting down in defensive stance, and he was clearly just explaining like it looked like nuances of things, and like I don't know if that's Chima asking questions or Mike Brown initiating it, but like a long conversation going on there that I'm sure they've had so many of throughout the course of this, and they probably have a really good feel for Chima, but I would like to get a better idea of what Chima brings before he's just potentially cut, you know?
Yeah.
So we'll see. A couple of people mentioning Metu. I don't see it happening. I think they just.
I don't think we've said his name.
We haven't said Metu's name, which that's all we need to say out Messi. I think we could leave the Messi conversation at that. I think that's it, man. I think that's all I got. I appreciate everybody hopping in here. Got a decent amount of people in the live stream, so thumbs up are always appreciated. I hate asking for this shit again. It feels so cheesy, but like it's just part.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah. Chris and I talked about this on the live stream, I think, or maybe it was before we pressed record.
No, it was
how
on the live
awkward
first
it
thing
is. Yes, doing these intros and outros, and you just have to like autopilot them and not think about it. And if you slip up at all, you like realize how awkward it is what you're saying. But anyways, that's all we got. Any film breakdowns coming? We are going to be watching these games back on Twitch. We'll see how much Chris is able to join me, but they'll definitely end up happening. And that's twitch.tv/BrendanNBA. We have the last game on there already on a VOD that Chris and I have watched. So that's where that is. I think that's it. Do you want to show your dog, Chris? Somebody's asking to see your dog.
It's my dog, Ruby. She's a cutie. She's a little tiny husky. She doesn't make any noise ever.
Do you,
sweet baby?
Do you?
People are always like shocked at how small she actually is. People think she's a lot bigger when they see her in person. But
how are you about sharing how you got your dog?
Oh no, for sure. It's actually like the craziest story. So I wanted a dog. I love dogs. Ever since I moved out by myself, I wanted a dog. Told my girlfriend I really want a dog. My girlfriend's sister worked at Barnes and Noble, had a coworker who was in this Facebook group. A lot of like moving pieces here. But essentially that Facebook group like is in connection with a shelter in Korea, South Korea, to my knowledge, not North. And this shelter like specializes in like they go around to like abandoned buildings and stuff. And like I guess in Korea, there's like a huge dog meat market. And there's a ton of dogs that are just like chained up in houses, locked up for like their entire life. They're just bred essentially to be eaten. And that was my dog. And like this organization will go rescue the dogs, cut the chains, take them to the shelter, and then they find someone to do it or who wants the dog. My coworker or my girlfriend's sister's coworker messaged me, was like, hey, like I have a dog, do you want it? And I was like, for sure. Flew this thing all the way from Korea to SFO. My plug picked her up.
My plug
over. It's just too many pieces explaining sisters, girlfriends, whatever. So the plug drove to SFO, drove straight to my house, dropped her off at the doorstep, and was like, here's your dog. My dumbass did not for a second think like, what if this dog has a ton of issues? Like, what if this is just an angry dog that like doesn't like people? I don't know why the hell I did not think about this. She's like the best dog ever. Hella quiet, doesn't make noise. You heard her barking, but like she rarely makes sound.
Seems super chill. I appreciate you sharing that. When you first told me that, it was like the wildest thing. And yeah, for 15 cents a day, you guys can download and help save. Download. You guys can donate and help save a dog. Help save a dog in South Korea.
For sure.
We need more Chris Watkins in this world. Is the point?
Shit.
I think that's
wish,
it, Chris.
bro.
See, we save everything that happens at the beginning of the King's Beat. We just do at the end of these King's Pulse episodes. This is where we rant, and the amount of people that come up to me and are like, "Yeah, the King's Beat is great." I just always have to skip the first 5 minutes.
Yeah,
This is the
is the better
KP
way of doing
equivalent.
yeah.
This is the KP equivalent. So
I think I'm going to say it. This kind of feels like a breakthrough episode.
A breakthrough.
Feels like a breakthrough
okay.
episode for King's Pulse. I'm going to say
You're
I'm
hella funny.
putting my stamp on this now.
You're hella funny. There was a YouTube comment a long time ago from an episode Chris and I and Frank did. Somebody said this feels like a breakthrough episode, and I didn't know how to take that. It's quite a backhanded compliment.
It's just that is the ultimate backhanded compliment. That should be in Webster's dictionary as a backhanded compliment.
It was very funny. Shit was so funny. All right. I think that's all we got. And we are going to obviously be keeping up more of these episodes. And there's a lot of good work going up by myself and all the other guys and gals at the King's Herald. Who skips the start of King's Beat? You don't want to hear Sean rail on the rain. True. It's true. Sean, yeah, the rain rant was legendary. The rain rant was a solid one. But check out the King's Herald for all the great work going on there, and take a look at their Patreon to support local independent Kings coverage. And if you enjoyed this episode of the King's Pulse podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review, and hear from us again in the next couple of days.